Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, so there are some myths and facts about Ramadan, which we just want to set the pace where everyone can understand what goes into it. So we also help our Muslim brothers and sisters to do the right thing. So I'll start with you, Sheikh. What are some of the truths and what are some of the myths that you have encountered in Ghana that helps or doesn't allow Muslims to observe this fast properly? I should put it so.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Some of the things that we thought that didn't have any firm foundation, and yet because of the belief Muslims had to contend with.
Right.
For example, is because of the strict observance, in those days they told you you could not even swallow saliva. You could not even swallow saliva.
That's almost impossible.
Yeah. One other thing is, in those days, they say even when you were hurt and blood flowed out of you, it broke your fasting. Yeah. There are other things like, which has a foundation and yet, but it has its challenges, is like the pungent, smell that comes from the mouth of a fasting person, because there is a tradition which says that to God, that pungent smell that comes out equals the fresh and good scent of a musk, a certain special kind of fragrance.
Right.
And so therefore, what does it mean to the Muslim who is fasting? And like, you come close to me now, we are doing this program, and how do I do it in such a way that what comes from me does not put you off,
right,
because it's an interaction.
Right.
And you find people upholding it, and there are scholars who emphasize it, and so on and so forth, and it can be a problem. I mean, these are some of the few things, yeah. But what we need to understand is that fasting, in its, stripped to its barest, essentials,
right,
it's more of a mental activity. It's more of a spiritual activity, which also has the physical dimension. So if you can put all these together, then you can do a fasting that gives you an experience of a certain fulfillment.
Right.
Anything less this. And then there is also this aspect of the too much emphasis on those things that I call as the basics, that is abstention from eating and drinking and having sex, as if it's the totality of fasting, leaving aside the spiritual domain of fasting. And so, in my view, we have fasted for so many years of our lives.
Right.
And the kind of transformation that is supposed to inject in our lives is not being achieved. In fact, that is a reality. I don't say that almost applies to all Muslims, but in my observation, majority of Muslims are not fulfilling. Yeah.
That's right. Imam, for you, how will I, a non-Muslim, not offend the Muslim? Because like in a work environment, maybe for me, every day I see you, I'm allowed to touch you. But maybe in this fasting period, if I do that, I'm making your fast invalid. What things can I, abstain from doing in order to help you uphold your fast?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll answer your question, but I would like to add something a little to what Sheikh has spoken about. You see, even God, who asks us to fast, exempted certain categories of people from fasting. Now, especially people with medical conditions. Now, I interacted with some medical doctors or health experts. People, you ask about challenges of people. People in conditions that's when they fast, it could be fatal to
their lives.
For not trusting non-Muslim medical practitioners would want to go contrary to advice and then fast. So the Muslim doctors themselves have taken it an issue, and then they are educating Muslims. So one of the biggest challenge is that, people who are in a good state of health are expected to fast. Others who for one or two reasons, I mean, they have challenges with their health, they are exempted from fasting. But another challenge with fasting that you see, it disorganizes your normal routine. This time around, you have to wake up very early in the morning, and then you might have to go back very late at night. Exactly. So some of these issues, some of these things might lead you into having issues with, I mean, your work environment. Definitely. So in that case, I think that it is incumbent on the fasting person to talk to his head of department, especially those who engage in heavy machinery, exactly, and those who have very tight schedule, so that at least some alternate arrangement may be made, so that so that they don't have problem with their bosses and then stuff. But regarding the question you asked, you see, the laws or legislation about Islam do not necessarily change. They don't even change when in months other than the month of Ramadan. They remain the same. Right. So as non-Muslims, the Quran itself has access to have excellent personal relations with Muslims. Now, you, the Muslim, in the working environment, take time to explain to people what Ramadan is all about, and then make effort at telling them that, for instance, we were discussing with Sheikh some very contentious issues. Now, one of the traditions of our Prophet said that the Prophet ﷺ have categories of females. So these ones, even in months other than Ramadan,
you're not expected to do that.
Exactly, especially certain category of females. That's religiously you are not supposed to come very close, but work environment is different. Now, another issue that from the work environment is that you don't have to impose yourself on, because you are fasting, you would want
almost everyone around you to go fast.
To allow you to do what you want to do. That one would not, you have to compromise at some point. But all working environments are not the same, okay? So depending on what prevails at your work environment, you need to adjust, and then you need to, make arrangement, talk to people on stuff like that. But issues like you mentioned that has to do with hugging, that has to do with, even in months other than Ramadan, these ones, they are not allowed to go.
Very well. But the Ramadan itself, I understand, is broken into 3 parts. What exactly do these 3 segments correspond with?
Sure.
Oh, thank you so much. There's a tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, who teaches us some of the very, because it's a very auspicious occasion, a period in which we celebrate God's own compassion, we celebrate the history of our salvation and guidance. And it comes with a certain holiness. And in that holiness, in fact, the holiness has to do with the revelation of the Quran itself. And by the holiness of the Quran, the Ramadan period also derives its holiness. And the holiness extends, logically, also to the holiness of individuals who are fasting during the period. Except those who do not understand. Those who do not understand sometimes will act in a manner as to violate the sanctity of the month, because of lack of a sufficient, understanding. So that is the issue. But God also makes available to us, comes close to us, I mean, figuratively.
Right.
Figuratively. And so in the tradition, it says that the month of Ramadan is broken into 3. And each one of the sections is dedicated to a certain attribute of God.
Right. Okay.
Because it's a period when he makes his munificence so large. In other words, he becomes so liberal in the way that he's so generous to us. And so the first part is for God's compassion.
Okay.
In other words, he opens widely the doors of his compassion beyond what you can imagine. And for us, it's so important, not even for the Muslims alone, but to the generality of society and the whole. Yeah. He makes it available.
Before you even go deep into it, when you talk about God's compassion, that's very sensitive, because in this, so I'm assuming this first period that you're still in, we're looking at that. But in these times, we know of extremists. There is, ISIS is on the rampage. People are taking. How has this affected you in this month of fasting?
In fact, it is one of my major concern. My major concern. You see, as Muslims, and I say it with emphasis, we carry a duty with which we are commissioned that the world must have an experience practically of God's goodness and compassion through us.
Right. But unfortunately,
the opposite is happening. I was telling myself that I'll be disappointed that within this period, if I hear the blast of any bomb or the trigger of any gun by any Muslim to any person, because you see, life is important not for the Muslim alone.
But for the whole world.
It's for the whole of the world.
Right.
So you don't disregard the life of another person, because any living being, any human being is an extension of yourself. That's why there's the issue of the respect for the neighbor. Is it the way Jesus mentioned in the scripture, love thy neighbor as thyself. And the Prophet Muhammad told us that you cannot call yourself a believer if you are harmful to your neighbor.
Right. And Sheikh, I see the passion with which you're talking about this, but unfortunately time will not allow us to delve into it. Okay. And on that note, we wish you happy Ramadan. We pray that at the end of it all, we'll all come to realize what God has for us in this month. And I've been speaking to Sheikh Shaibu Amayao and Imam Abbas Abdul Karim Umar. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us.